I'm a king and I'm going to kill you. So I'm on the floor going, thou liest, and all this crap. And I go, Jesus, this is acting. I'm not sure I want any part of this.
Tim Allen has been America's everyman for decades, whether it was as Tim the Toolman Taylor on Home Improvement, the voice of Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story, or the Christmas icon himself in the Santa Claus trilogy. His career has spanned stand-up comedy, television, film, and even best-selling books. To millions of fans, Tim has always seemed like the lovable, family-friendly star who could do no wrong. Behind the scenes, Tim Allen's career has been marked not only by huge success, but also by clashes with colleagues, creative disagreements, and more than a few bruised egos. Known for his strong personality and sharp comedic instincts, Tim has occasionally butted heads with co-stars who didn't see eye to eye with his vision, or who simply didn't mesh with his larger-than-life presence on set. Now, at 72, Tim Allen has finally broken his silence about one particular co-star, someone he admits he hated working with. While he has often chosen to keep Hollywood politics behind closed doors, this revelation has peeled back the curtain on the side of Tim Allen fans rarely see, the side that remembers grudges, frustrations, and the darker reality of working in show business. So who was this co-star that Tim Allen couldn't stand? What really happened on the set that left him with so much resentment? And how does this conflict fit into the broader story of his career? A story full of laughter on screen, but tension and disappointment behind the cameras? Let's dive into the untold truth. Tim Allen's journey to Hollywood stardom is nothing short of extraordinary. Long before he became a household name, Allen's life was defined by hardship, mistakes, and resilience. Born in Denver, Colorado, in 1953, Tim's childhood was marked by tragedy when he lost his father in a car accident at just 11 years old. This devastating loss shaped him deeply, and in interviews, Tim has often described it as a turning point, an event that left him grappling with questions about life, responsibility, and identity. Comedy became his coping mechanism, the shield he used to deflect pain and win approval. After moving to Michigan with his family, Tim discovered his comedic gift while performing stand-up routines. His early career wasn't glamorous. He spent years grinding it out in clubs, testing material, and crafting his stage persona. His comedy often leaned into themes of masculinity, mechanics, and family life, relatable material that resonated with blue-collar America. The rough edges of his act, combined with his booming voice and natural charisma, quickly set him apart from the competition. But his road to success wasn't without scandal. In 1978, Tim was arrested on serious drug charges, an event that could have ended his career before it even began. Facing a lengthy prison sentence, he struck a deal with authorities and served over 2 years behind bars. For many, that might have been the end of the story, but for Tim, it became the fuel for reinvention. He emerged from prison determined to rebuild his life and channel his energy into comedy. By the mid-1980s, his stand-up specials were drawing national attention, and Hollywood came calling. That call would change everything. In 1991, Allen was cast in Home Improvement, the sitcom that would define his career. As Tim, the Toolman Taylor, he became the face of suburban American comedy. His catchphrases, like the famous grunt, and his bumbling yet lovable persona, turned Home Improvement into one of the decade's biggest hits. Week after week, millions tuned in to laugh at Tim's misadventures with tools, family, and his wise but teasing neighbor, Wilson. The success of Home Improvement cemented Allen as not just a comedian but a Hollywood power player. He was soon voicing Buzz Lightyear in Pixar's Toy Story franchise, a role that introduced him to an entirely new generation. By the late 1990s, he had also solidified himself as a film star with the Santa Claus and its sequels, becoming the quintessential Christmas icon for families worldwide. But behind the laughs and success, Tim was quietly developing a reputation in Hollywood for being strong-willed, opinionated, and occasionally difficult to work with. Co-stars and crew members often described him as professional but not always easygoing. His perfectionist tendencies, combined with his blunt manner, sometimes led to tension on set. This duality, America's lovable tool man on screen and a demanding presence behind the scenes, was the real Tim Allen. For the most part, those tensions stayed hidden from the public eye. After all, audiences wanted to believe in the wholesome family man they saw on TV and in movies. But in the insular world of Hollywood, stories circulated of creative clashes, bruised egos, and a star who didn't always get along with everyone around him. And while many of these conflicts passed quietly, there was one co-star in particular who Tim Allen admitted he flat-out hated working with. The story of that relationship, and the fallout that followed, offers a rare glimpse into the side of Tim Allen that fans rarely see. The man who, despite decades of success, could never quite escape the tensions of Hollywood collaboration. When Home Improvement premiered in 1991, it quickly became one of the most successful sitcoms of the decade. Audiences fell in love with Tim the Tool Man Taylor, his wife Jill, and their 3 boys as they navigated family life with humor, heart, and plenty of power tool mishaps. On the surface, it seemed like the perfect set, a hit show, soaring, ratings, and a cast that appeared like one big happy family. But behind the laughter, cracks began to form. At the center of those cracks was Tim Allen himself. As both the star and, increasingly, a creative force on the show, Tim had enormous influence. He wasn't just an actor delivering lines. He shaped the tone, the jokes, and the rhythm of the series. While this control ensured Home Improvement carried his unique comedic stamp, it also created friction with writers, directors, and especially co-stars who wanted their voices heard. The most notable tension emerged between Tim Allen and his on-screen wife, Patricia Richardson, who played Jill Taylor. From the beginning, Patricia brought strength and depth to the role, balancing Tim's over-the-top antics with grounded, heartfelt performances. She fought to ensure that Jill wasn't just the stereotypical sitcom wife rolling her eyes at her husband's mistakes. Instead, she wanted Jill to be a fully realized character, with her own storylines, growth, and independence. This sometimes put her at odds with Tim. He envisioned Home Improvement as primarily a vehicle for his comedy, a platform for his toolman persona, complete with grunts, pratfalls, and macho blunders. Patricia, on the other hand, believed the show's heart came from the family dynamic, with Jill serving as the emotional anchor. Disagreements over scripts and character arcs often spilled into heated conversations. Crew members have recalled moments when Patricia pushed back against storylines that she felt demeaned her character, only for Tim to bristle at the resistance. While both remained professional, the tension was palpable. Patricia later admitted in interviews that she felt she had to constantly advocate for Jill's role, sometimes clashing with Tim in the process. For Tim, who was protective of his comedic identity, it felt like a challenge to his authority and vision. Adding fuel to the fire was Tim's perfectionism. He demanded precision in delivery, timing, and execution, traits that made the show sharp, but also made the atmosphere on set intense. Not everyone thrived under that pressure. While some cast members appreciated his high standards, others found him controlling and difficult to please. The result was an environment where laughter on screen often masked real frustrations off screen. The show's child actors, too, sometimes felt the tension. Jonathan Taylor Thomas, who played middle son Randy, was particularly ambitious and intellectual, often bringing his own ideas to the table. As he grew older, he clashed with producers and even Tim himself over his desire to pursue education and step back from acting. Tim, who had invested so much in making Home Improvement a success, took Jonathan's decision personally, and their relationship reportedly cooled as a result. Despite these tensions, Home Improvement remained a juggernaut. It ran for 8 successful seasons, making Tim Allen one of television's highest-paid actors. But the behind-the-scenes conflicts left scars. When Patricia Richardson ultimately decided to leave the show at the end of season 8, she cited burnout and a desire to move on. But insiders suggested the ongoing creative clashes with Tim had played a major role in her decision. Without Jill, there could be no home improvement, and the show ended shortly after. For Tim, the experience was bittersweet. He had headlined one of the most successful sitcoms of all time, but the cost had been fractured relationships and lingering grudges. He later admitted that he hadn't always been easy to work with, though he rarely went into specifics. Still, the tension between him and Patricia Richardson became one of the most whispered-about conflicts in sitcom history. And yet, this wasn't the only co-star Tim found himself at odds with. As his career expanded into films, new clashes emerged, one, in particular that Tim would later describe in no uncertain terms, a co-star he hated working with. While Home Improvement made Tim Allen a television superstar, it was his transition into movies that elevated him into a true household name. By the mid-1990s, he had cemented himself as both a TV icon and a bankable film actor. With The Santa Claus 1994, Allen became the face of Christmas for an entire generation, while his voice work as Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story 1995 gave him a place in one of the most beloved animated franchises of all time. But for every hit, there were challenges, and one of those challenges came in the form of a co-star Tim Allen absolutely hated working with. In Hollywood, egos often collide, especially when two big names share the screen. For Tim, one of the most infamous clashes came during the production of Galaxy Quest 1999, a sci-fi comedy that has since achieved cult classic status. The film starred Tim as Jason Nesmith, a washed-up TV actor who once played a space captain on a cheesy sci-fi series. Joining him were stars like Sigourney Weaver, Alan Rickman, Tony Shalhoub, and Daryl Mitchell. On paper, it was a dream ensemble. On set, however, tensions brewed, particularly between Tim and the late Alan Rickman. Rickman, a classically trained actor from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, was known for his disciplined, serious approach to his craft. Tim, by contrast, came from stand-up comedy and sitcoms, where timing, improvisation, and energy were paramount. Their styles couldn't have been more different, and that difference quickly turned into friction. Rickman reportedly grew frustrated with Allen's tendency to ad-lib lines, crack jokes during serious rehearsals, and dominate scenes with his larger-than-life personality. Allen, for his part, felt Rickman was overly stiff and condescending, as if comedy was beneath him. Crew members recalled that the tension often broke through in subtle digs and sarcastic remarks. Rickman allegedly referred to Allen as the comedian in a dismissive tone, while Allen once joked that Rickman couldn't take a laugh if it hit him in the face. Though the friction was mostly professional, it was palpable enough that others on set noticed. Sigourney Weaver, who tried to keep the peace, later hinted that the clashing personalities made for a challenging environment. Ironically, it was this very tension that helped fuel their on-screen chemistry. Rickman's dry, serious delivery perfectly balanced Allen's brash humor, creating a dynamic that audiences loved. Still, when the cameras stopped rolling, the relationship was far from warm. In interviews years later, Tim Allen admitted that working with Alan Rickman was one of the most difficult experiences of his career. He respected Rickman's talent, but found him impossible to collaborate with at times. Allen even confessed that there were days he dreaded going to set because he knew another clash was inevitable. And while he softened his comments after Rickman's passing in 2016, friends say Tim always considered him one of the most challenging co-stars he ever faced. But Rickman wasn't the only film co-star who tested Tim's patience. During the Santa Claus 2, 2002, Allen reportedly had friction with director Michael Lembeck and several supporting actors over creative decisions. He wanted to lean more into sharp adult humor, while others pushed for a lighter, kid-friendly tone. Though not as publicized, insiders suggest Allen often bristled at being typecast as the Christmas guy and clashed with anyone who tried to box him into that role. Still, it was Galaxy Quest that stood out as the definitive clash of his film career. For Allen, the experience became a reminder that Hollywood wasn't just about telling jokes and entertaining audiences. It was about navigating egos, philosophies, and personalities that didn't always mix. And in Alan Rickman, he had found a co-star whose brilliance he admired, but whose company he openly disliked. By the time Tim reflected on it years later, he admitted that while the friction had been painful, it had also pushed him to grow. And working with someone so different forced him to adapt, to sharpen his craft, and to recognize that comedy and drama weren't as far apart as he once believed. Still, when asked about his least favorite collaborations, he never hesitated to name that one film and that one co-star. For Tim Allen, Alan Rickman became the symbol of the one truth every actor eventually learns. Not every great performance comes from a great partnership. By the time Tim Allen reached his 70s, he had lived through enough success, scandals, and setbacks to fill several lifetimes. From his early days as a struggling stand-up comic to becoming one of the highest-paid stars on television, and from his run-ins with the law to voicing one of the most iconic animated characters in history, his career was a roller coaster. And yet, when people asked Tim about regrets, one subject always seemed to resurface: the co-stars and colleagues he just couldn't connect with, most notably Alan Rickman during Galaxy Quest. Over the years, Tim grew more candid about his struggles in Hollywood. In interviews, he admitted that fame didn't erase his insecurities. "I've always felt like an outsider," he once said, describing how his prison past and unconventional entry into Hollywood left him feeling like he didn't quite belong among classically trained actors. That sense of insecurity sometimes manifested as defensiveness or arrogance, especially when working with serious performers like Rickman. Looking back, Tim acknowledged that some of the tension may have been his own doing. Still, he didn't shy away from admitting that he hated certain collaborations. "There are people you just don't click with," he explained. "You try to make it work for the camera, and it usually does. But when the camera shuts off, you're just counting the minutes until the day's over." For Tim, Alan Rickman embodied that dynamic perfectly: respect for the craft, but zero chemistry off-screen. Interestingly, Tim's reflection wasn't entirely bitter. After Rickman's death in 2016, Alan softened his words, praising Rickman's brilliance and admitting that their differences may have actually strengthened the movie. "He made me better, even if I didn't enjoy it," Tim remarked. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from a man known more for wisecracks than introspection. But Rickman wasn't the only ghost lingering in Tim's memory. He also spoke openly about the tensions on Home Improvement, especially with Patricia Richardson. While he stopped short of naming names in harsh terms, he acknowledged that his need for control sometimes made him a pain in the ass on set. In later years, he and Patricia reconnected on friendly terms, with both admitting that time and distance had softened the old friction. "We were both doing our jobs," Tim reflected. "She was protecting her character, and I was protecting mine." Tim's ability to eventually laugh at himself became his saving grace. In comedy tours and interviews, he often joked about his reputation for being difficult, turning what could have been a lasting stain into another punchline. "I'm not hard to work with," he quipped once. "I'm just always right." It was classic Tim Allen, half humor, half truth. As he entered his 70s, Allen also began to place his grudges in a broader perspective. He admitted that age had given him clarity. When you're young, every clash feels huge. Every disagreement feels like war. But when you're older, you realize it's just people trying to do their best. In that sense, even the co-star he hated working with wasn't truly an enemy, but rather part of the messy process that shaped his career. For fans, this honesty was refreshing. Many had grown up watching Allen on Home Improvement or Toy Story, seeing him as the embodiment of fun and family. Hearing him speak openly about grudges and tensions reminded them that even beloved stars carry scars. It also highlighted the complexity of Hollywood itself, where collaboration can be both the greatest joy and the greatest source of pain. And so, when Tim Allen finally broke his silence about the co-star he hated working with, it wasn't just gossip. It was a rare glimpse into the humanity of a man who spent his life making others laugh. It was a confession that even amid fame and fortune, he wasn't immune to bitterness, regret, or grudges. In the end, though, Tim Allen chose to let humor be the lens through which he remembered it all. "I've worked with people I loved and people I couldn't stand," he said with a grin. But either way, they all ended up in the act. For Tim, laughter remained the final word, the tool that built his career, healed his wounds, and kept audiences coming back. And even if he couldn't forgive every co-star, he learned to live with the memories, turning even the most painful ones into part of his story.